My wife was smiling while her ex talked about the way she used to laugh in his car, the way she used to fall asleep on his shoulder after late-night drives through downtown Atlanta, and the way she once told him nobody would ever understand her like he did. He said all of that while sitting across from me at our own dinner table, twirling a glass like he was the guest of honor. And I just sat there, nodding like a fool. Calm, polite, measured, because neither of them knew I had already seen enough to understand what kind of night this really was. Before I go any further, subscribe if you like stories where people think they're in control right up until the floor disappears under them. Because this one kept getting worse every 10 minutes, and by the end, I swear, even I almost felt bad. Almost. My name is Darnell. I'm 36, born and raised in Decatur, Georgia, and I'm not one of those men who pretend they never messed up. I messed up plenty. I've forgotten anniversaries, spoken too quickly when I was angry, and once ruined a whole Thanksgiving by taking criticism like a child. But I always fixed what I could. My wife, Rochelle, used to say that was what she loved most about me. Not that I was perfect, but that I corrected myself. That if I hurt her feelings, I came back with an apology before bedtime. That if I was wrong, I would actually say the words out loud. I believed that mattered. We'd been married 4 years, and together almost 7. We had a condo just outside Midtown, 2 incomes, 1 spoiled little terrier named Bishop, and the kind of life people see on Instagram and assume means peace. Looking back now, I think peace and appearance are 2 very different things. The dinner with her ex wasn't even supposed to happen. That's the part that still bothers me. Rochelle told me 2 days earlier that an old college friend was back in town for a networking event and might stop by a group dinner some friends were planning. She said it casually, too casually maybe, but I didn't press. I knew the name, Terrence. She had mentioned him years ago, always with this practiced shrug, like he was just some chapter she'd already boxed up. Ancient history, she called him. That should have stayed history. Instead, he ended up in my kitchen laughing like he paid bills there. What made it worse was Rochelle looked different that night. Not different like beautiful. She was always beautiful, but polished in a way that felt intentional. She wore the gold earrings I bought her for our 3rd anniversary, the dress she usually saved for rooftop birthdays, and a perfume she hadn't used in months. I noticed all that the way husbands notice things they pretend not to notice because they don't want to sound insecure. And before anybody says I was reaching, hold on. Because the really ugly part wasn't what she wore. It was how she looked at him after every little story. Terrence had that slick kind of confidence that depends on other people being too decent to check it. Tall, sharp beard line, expensive watch, smile too rehearsed to be natural. He kept calling Rochelle Ro, like it was still his right, and every time he did, she didn't correct him. Not once. I was trying to stay grown about it. Try not to turn one uncomfortable dinner into some insecure husband scene, but then he leaned back and said, "Man, you probably don't even know the real Rochelle." And she smirked. Smirked, like he'd said something cute instead of disrespectful in my house. That smirk is what people need to understand. It wasn't embarrassment. It wasn't nervousness. It was the expression of somebody enjoying your confusion. I laughed a little because sometimes men laugh when we're buying ourselves time. I said, "Well, enlighten me then." I meant it like a joke, but Terrence took it as an invitation. He started talking about Spelman homecoming parties, old restaurants in East Atlanta, a road trip to Savannah, all these intimate little fragments Rochelle had never once shared with me. Things that weren't scandalous by themselves, but stacked together, they started to feel, no, not wrong. Familiar. Recent, almost. Subscribe if you already feel where this is going, because I promise the details matter. The first real crack in the night came when Terrence mentioned a tiny seafood place off Memorial Drive and said, "You still order the grilled catfish with extra lemon, right?" Rochelle froze for maybe half a second before smiling again and saying, "Some things don't change." That would have been nothing, except Rochelle and I had eaten at that exact place 3 weeks earlier, and when I'd asked how she knew about it, she told me a co-worker recommended it. Not an ex. Not I used to go there. A co-worker. I didn't say anything then. I wish I could tell you I was being strategic from the start, but honestly, part of me was still hoping there was some innocent explanation big enough to cover all this. I'm the type of man who will search for a door before admitting a room has no exit. A lot of good men do that too long. We call it patience because it sounds better than fear. So I kept eating, kept nodding, kept listening while Terrence got more comfortable and Rochelle got looser in the face. Too loose. Like she believed I was still one discovery behind the truth. But I wasn't one discovery behind. I was several ahead. See, 4 nights earlier, Rochelle had fallen asleep on the couch with Bishop curled up on her legs and her phone buzzing every 3 minutes on the armrest. I wasn't trying to snoop. That's the truth. I reached over because the buzzing was constant, and I thought maybe it was her mother. The screen lit up with a preview that said, "Still thinking about Wednesday." No name, just a number. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like an elevator losing power. I should have woken her up right then. I didn't. What I did instead was wrong, at least partly. I used her thumb while she slept to unlock the phone. I know some people will say once you suspect betrayal, all rules are off. I don't believe that. 2 things can be true. I crossed a line, and I crossed it because something was already rotting inside my marriage. What I found was not a full-blown affair in plain language. That would have almost been easier. It was worse in a slower way. Half sentences, deleted gaps, calls at odd hours, photos of places. Wish you were here. You look good tonight. Enough to poison every benefit of the doubt. And then there was Wednesday. That word kept coming up. Still thinking about Wednesday. Can't believe Wednesday happened. You almost got me in trouble Wednesday. Rochelle had told me she was working late that Wednesday and got home just before 10 smelling like somebody else's cologne mixed with her perfume. I asked if the office had some kind of client event. She said yes. I even apologized for sounding suspicious. That part burns. I apologized. Meanwhile, in those messages, there was a selfie Terrence sent from a rooftop bar in Buckhead. Timestamp. Wednesday, 8:14 p.m. Rochelle had heart reacted to it. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the bathroom with the door closed, Bishop scratching outside because he hates when anybody is upset, and I took pictures of what I could. Rochelle had deleted threads before, you could tell. There were odd jumps in conversation, missing pieces, times where a message clearly referenced something no longer visible. But people who lie a lot get lazy around the edges. They forget what metadata remembers. They forget rideshare receipts go to email. They forget restaurant reservations sync to shared calendars when they used an old setting years ago. They forget husbands sometimes do the tech stuff in a marriage. By the next afternoon, I had a timeline. Not complete, but ugly enough. A team dinner that turned out to be a table for 2 at a rooftop lounge. A client presentation on a Sunday that lined up with parking validation near Terrence's hotel. A random cash transfer with a note, "For old times, LOL." That one sat in my chest like a brick. Still, I was not ready to blow the marriage up on assumptions and digital smoke. I wanted certainty. I told myself I needed one clean moment where either the whole thing snapped into focus or I admitted I let paranoia lead me too far. Then Rochelle told me Terrence might stop by for dinner. That was the moment everything became simple. Not easier, just simpler. Because innocent people don't bring emotional chaos into their house and smile through it. Innocent people don't let an old ex perform intimacy in front of their spouse. Innocent people don't test boundaries they're trying to protect. So I said yes. I even offered to cook. I seasoned short ribs, made garlic mashed potatoes, opened the good bottle of Cabernet we'd been saving, and set the table like a man honoring a guest. The whole time, I kept thinking, go ahead. Show me who you are. Terrence kept showing me. In between bites, he told stories designed to exclude me. Remember that little tattoo you almost got? Remember what happened on your birthday in New Orleans? Remember that song? What was it? That old Anita Baker Joy. He snapped his fingers while Rochelle laughed and corrected him. She was glowing, not from joy exactly, but from recognition. From being seen by somebody who knew an older version of her she had apparently been feeding in secret. And I know how that sounds. Jealous. Bitter. But there's a difference between jealousy and noticing your spouse become more alive with betrayal than with home. Here's where another discovery hit me. And this one made me almost lose my composure. Terrence mentioned a rainstorm in Savannah and said, "That was the last time you wore my hoodie, remember?" Rochelle laughed into her wine and said, "You still holding on to that?" Still holding on to that. Present tense. Not you used to. Not you used to tease me. I looked at Rochelle, and for the first time all evening she saw something in my face she didn't like. She reached for my hand under the table. I moved mine to my glass instead. She noticed. Terrence did too. "Everything good, man?" he asked, with that fake concern people use when they enjoy your discomfort. I said, "Yeah, just taking it all in." And that was true. I was taking in the body language, the little glances, the unfinished shorthand between them. I was taking in how Rochelle only called him Terrence when talking to me, but to him she said T once, soft and automatic. I was taking the fact that he knew where we kept the corkscrew drawer, because before I could stand, he was already halfway to it. He stopped when he realized what he'd revealed. But too late is still too late. Subscribe right here, because that corkscrew moment was where any last piece of denial finally died. I never showed on my face, though. I stood up, smiled, and said I'd grab dessert. I went to the kitchen, but I wasn't getting dessert. I was getting my phone and the small folder I'd made that afternoon. Screenshots, timestamps, calendar exports, and one last thing Rochelle didn't know I had. 2 weeks earlier, by accident, a voicemail had synced to our family tablet in the living room. I had played it once, confused, then again with my heart pounding. Terrence's voice. "Call me when he falls asleep." I almost used it that same night. I found it, but something in me wanted the truth to walk all the way into the light under its own power. So I returned to the table with peach cobbler in one hand and my phone in the other. I served dessert first. That matters to me for some reason. I wanted to stay myself, not become rage wearing my face. We all took a bite. Rochelle said, "This is good, babe." Terrence nodded like he belonged there. Then he made the mistake that end of the night. He raised his glass and said, "To old memories that never really die." I smiled back and said, "That's funny." Rochelle looked at me sharp then, because my voice had changed. Not louder, colder, because I was just thinking about how recent some of these memories sound. Terrence's grin thinned. Rochelle set her fork down too carefully. I reached over to the sideboard and picked up the remote for the TV in our dining area. We used it for music videos during dinner parties. I cast my phone screen to it. Rochelle stood halfway up and said, "Darnell, what are you doing?" I said, "Finishing the story since both of y'all started it." First, I put up the screenshot from Wednesday, then the restaurant reservation, then the rideshare receipt to Terrence's hotel, then the voicemail transcript. I didn't rush. That's the cruelest part. Maybe not shouting, not pacing, not cursing, just reading evidence in a regular voice while the room got smaller and smaller around them. Still thinking about Wednesday. Swipe. Can't believe Wednesday happened. Swipe. Call me when he falls asleep. Swipe. Terrence tried to laugh and say this looked crazy out of context. I said good. Add some context. Rochelle just stared at the screen like blinking could make pixels turn back into secrets. What Rochelle didn't know was that before dinner, I had already sent a password-protected folder to myself, my brother Jamal, and our marriage attorney consultation email draft. I hadn't sent it to her family, and no, I didn't need a crowd. Public humiliation is loud. Precision is quieter. But I did have one final move ready because Rochelle cared deeply, painfully deeply, about appearances and narratives. So while she sat there trying to calculate which lie could still survive, I opened our building's shared digital photo frame app. It loops family photos in the lobby for residents who opt in. Guess whose account managed ours? Rochelle caught on 1 second too late. I uploaded a black title slide that read, "Trust Matters. Some memories are current events." Behind it, queued but not yet published, were screenshots proving she had lied to me about where she was, who she was with, and when it started. I didn't even need to hit confirm. Just showing her the pending upload on my phone was enough. Her face changed in a way I'll never forget. Not because she was sorry, because she was terrified of losing control of the image before she could edit it. "Don't do that," she whispered. Terrence looked at her like he'd never really known her. And that's when the final discovery arrived, almost as a gift from the universe. Terrence, suddenly defensive, said, "Hold on. You told me y'all were basically separated." I looked at Rochelle. She looked at him. And there it was, new information for everybody. Rochelle had not just been lying to me. She had been lying to him too. She told him we were sleeping in separate rooms, only staying together for finances, done in every way but paperwork. None of it was true. That's the thing about cheaters who love control. Eventually, they build two fake worlds and forget those worlds can collide. Terrence's whole posture collapsed. You said he knew, Terrence told her. Rochelle started stammering. I mean, he knew we were struggling. He cut her off. No, you said this was understood. I actually laughed then. One sharp laugh I couldn't help. Because the woman who had spent all night enjoying my humiliation was suddenly trapped between two versions of herself, and neither man in the room recognized the other one's script. Rochelle turned to me with tears starting, trying to pivot into remorse now that the audience had changed. Darnell, please let me explain. I said no. Explain to him why you needed two lies to maintain one ego. That line hit harder than anything else I said all night. Maybe because it was true. Maybe because I didn't yell it. I just stood, unplugged the cash from the TV, and slid the folder of printed screenshots across the table toward her. You can keep those, I said. You'll need help remembering what happened once you start rewriting tonight in your head. Then I looked at Terrence and told him he needed to leave. He started to speak, maybe to defend himself, maybe to apologize, maybe to save face. I held up a hand and said, whatever version of a man you are, be it somewhere else. Rochelle followed me into the hallway after he left, barefoot, crying, angry now, cycling through every emotion people use when consequences finally arrive. She accused me of setting her up. She accused me of spying. She accused me of wanting to embarrass her. Some of that had truth in it. I had set the table for truth, and yes, I had watched silently while she betrayed herself. I told her I was not proud of checking her phone. I told her that part would bother me for a long time. But I also told her adults do not get to hide behind my worst moment to erase their pattern of choices. The next morning, I canceled the lobby upload. I never released it. That's another reason I can sleep at night. I didn't need strangers to know. I just needed Rochelle to understand, for one clean, terrifying minute, what it felt like to have the story leave her hands. I moved in with my brother for a month, filed the paperwork, and let the marriage end without one dramatic social media post. But the cruel part, the part Rochelle hated most, was simpler than public shame. I became impossible to recast as the villain. Calm records, clear timelines, no screaming, no revenge fantasy she could point to, just facts. Last I heard, Terrence cut contact when he realized he had not been chosen, just used. Rochelle emailed me paragraphs and voicemails and one handwritten letter saying she never meant for things to go that far. Maybe that was true. Things like this rarely start with people planning the end. They start with vanity, secrecy, and the thrill of being mirrored by someone who remembers your younger self. But here's the cliffhanger for anybody still watching. The person who hurts you is not always destroyed by losing you. Sometimes they're destroyed by finally seeing themselves clearly. Subscribe for more stories because some endings don't scream. They simply close the door.